topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working in Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If we've not met before and you don't know me, I'm a workforce advisor, organizational psychologist, management consultant, logotherapist, speaker, and author. My team and I at Gusto Now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building a dynamic, high-performance culture, inspirational leadership, and nurturing managers activated by meaning and purpose. You can learn more about us at gusto-now.com or my personal site, elisecortez.com. With us today is James Root. He's a senior partner of Bain & Company and chair of Bain Futures. He's also the author of The Archetype Effect, which is what we're talking about today. And that book is about offering leaders a new way to understand what motivates them at work every day and why they feel how they feel about their job. He joins us today from London, where he's currently on site doing some work. His home is in Hong Kong. A hearty welcome, James, to Working on Purpose.
Great to be here. Thank you, Elise.
So welcome. So glad I found you. And I stumbled across your book. And then I went up to my trusted friend, LinkedIn, and reached out to you and said, hey, come play with me on my podcast. Let's talk about this magnificent work. So let's first commend and celebrate this beautiful thing you put into the world, James. It's really gorgeous. I loved reading every single last page of it.
I'm so pleased. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So welcome. And considering I also am a meaning and work researcher and identity researcher and found 15 modes of engagement that I found when you looked at the level of meaning that people ascribe to their work and how that works relates to their sense of self, I found 15. So your work is really interesting and sort of helps align and further illuminate what I did. So exciting. But you and I are kind of geeky and weird in this way. So what's your fascination with motivations of work? Where'd that come from?
It comes directly from my day job, if I can call it that.
Okay.
As an advisor to corporations, public, private, family, founder-led businesses, trying to help them improve their performance, which is what we do at Bain, what I've been doing for 35 years. There was definitely something changing in the way that the individuals at those firms related to their jobs. And there was something also changing in the needs that the firms or the organizations had from those people with the advent of more and more waves of automation and technology and efficiency programs. Something was changing on both sides of the ledger. So that got me very, very provoked on this topic.
Thank you. Love it. Well, and then, of course, as you were going through, and we'll talk later in one of our other segments about just how it was that you did this research, because that's pretty interesting, too, and really what you were considering when you looked at the components of it. But you did make a delightful discovery in that you discovered pretty quickly that not everybody is motivated to work for the same reason. No surprise there.
I think no surprise, but an oddly sort of veiled secret, and at least in the way that the conventional talent management systems that are, the HRMS that are embedded in so many firms, whether from the giants, the SAPs or the Metas or the PeopleSofts, whatever, or even from the smaller firms, assume. So the assumption that underpins those systems, I think, are old. They're outdated. They're 50 plus years old and go back to a time when you could meaningfully talk about an average worker and design a talent system around an average worker. And if I could sort of summarize what I mean by that, it is an assumption that whether you're labor, whether you're management, whether you're labor trying to become management sometimes, you are in your job just trying to climb the pole.
Right.
Just trying to take the next step up the ladder,
Right.
to have, more layers between you and everybody else, and wider spans and more responsibilities. And that was kind of the model that informed organization design, reward structures, performance management, career pathing for decades and decades and decades. And it worked really well. Let's not pretend it was a failure. It wasn't. It was really, really good and successful, because we just didn't assume that individual motivations mattered at all. And I think that you can no longer get away with that. So both on the organization side, where now, that concept of the professional manager trudging his or her way up the ladder is still real, but it's no longer necessarily the main event in many firms. Individual contributors are important. Coaches, advisor, expert roles have become more and more important. Do more and more work, particularly supported by technology. And then on the human side, while we said to people, who do you want to be? We'd like to empower you to be who you want to be at work. A fantastic thing to do. Turns out, ironically, they turned around and said, well, I don't want to be that person who's just climbing the ladder.
Right.
Some do, and that's great. Bravo for them, but lots do not. They prefer a different model. And yet our systems are still predicated on that old set of beliefs.
Mm-hmm. To that end, James, I really like what you say, but there's so many quotable pieces of your book. But I like how you call for the need to de-average the employee and build good jobs and career paths that meet the needs of this diverse workforce. To your point, and what I find so exciting about your work, and part of the reason I wanted to have you on, is it's one thing to illuminate this opportunity and this problem. It's another to be able to start to help organizations to move toward a solution. And I think your work really does that. So this idea of de-averaging the worker is pretty interesting.
Yes, and trust me, I'm there's no false modesty in what I'm about to say, which is you're a real psychologist. I am not. I'm a business advisor and a strategist who's understood that without people are still the most valuable resource. AI, cloud, mobile, PC revolution, internet notwithstanding, people are still the most valuable resource that we have. And they are motivated differently. I think we can prove that. If it wasn't already obvious, I can now prove it with this data. And yet we treat them all the same. So yes, this idea of doing something that we routinely do for our customers. I mean, it is absolutely standard behavior for decades to segment customers, to say, what does Elise want? Was that the same as what James wants? Well, maybe I can give her something different within my category. And yet we don't do that for our workers, even though they're literally the same people. Different times of day, different days of the week, it's literally the same people. So we have all these highly sophisticated product companies selling us services, selling us products, or increasingly technology firms selling our profile to advertisers. Bravo, why not? They can. We can always opt out if we want to. Most of us don't. And yet, those firms selling us products, selling our profiles, they know a lot more about what motivates us than the firms we actually go to work for every day. Something's weird about that.
Wow, that's profound, James. That's really profound. Thanks for sharing that. I don't think I had that perspective at all. Even reading your book, I don't think I grabbed that perspective. So now we need to talk about something really important, James, that what you and I opened our conversation around, because at first you had some reticence about coming on my podcast, right? Because you were concerned that we would only be talking about meaning and purpose, and that there would be an assumption that everyone wants it. And you've, of course, discovered that not everyone does want meaning and purpose in their work.
Yes. And I really appreciate the way you responded to my question on that. It was extremely proactive and helpful. So here's what I think I've learned, okay? And I'm wide open to alternative points of view, but this is what I've learned from almost 50,000 people that we talked to. I want to distinguish, first of all, something that is often not distinguished in this dialectic, but that is between the purpose and meaning of the firm and purpose and meaning of the individual. This is super. So yes. Firm meaning and purpose in our research is really important. No doubt about it. About 70% of the people we talk to around the world, we'll probably describe them later, it's a very wide range, say that the purpose of my firm, the meaning, the value statement, whatever you want to call it, that matters to me. And about half that number, 30-ish%, said it's really very important, particularly when I'm making career decisions. Do I leave? Do I stay? Do I change jobs? Do I stay at this firm? And that's not everybody, but that's a good chunk of people. So all the work that you do, all the work that I've done over my career, all the work that clients I observe doing on developing a purpose statement of some sort is very valuable. I don't want to say anything about that. Except good, keep going, important. But it is not the case in our research that individuals are all clamoring for their personal meaning and purpose at work. Some are. Great. I hope they find it fantastic. Must be just stupendously satisfying for them if they do. To find a kind of almost religious experience at work that, organized religion used to provide for many people. That's something that a fascinating book by Professor Carolyn Chen at Berkeley explores in Silicon Valley, this sort of approximation of work to religion. But lots of people, 3 of the archetypes that we're going to talk about later in particular, are not looking for meaning and purpose or self-transcendence or self-worth or identity at work. They're looking for it, if they do, outside of work, perhaps in their family, perhaps in faith, perhaps in sports, I don't know, some other arena is where they find that in their lives. Work serves different purposes. Doesn't mean it's not important, very important, but not that particular type of importance.
When I was doing my research, James, it was, again, around meaning of work and identity, and I wanted to understand how people experience that connection, that relationship between those two. And I found in the beginning this idea that the work was detached, their identity was detached from their work. And so then I found within that different modes that they could care less about, what their work, and that was like 1% of who they were. The rest of their life happened outside of work. So there's so much that we can unpack with this. And I think it's so important. And one thing I discovered too, James, is when I would be out doing workshops on the 5 modes of engagement, when you didn't consider the meaning levels, and then the 15 when you did, and people would identify pretty readily which one was their own. They would be like, you mean other people experience these other 14 ways of working? You're kidding me, right? It's incredibly illuminating, which I think, again, I want to go there next, is the opportunity and promise of understanding and embracing these different archetypes that you found to nurture and create cultures and reward systems accordingly is vast, right? So if you could sort of speak to a bit about what you see as that promise, that opening. I see tremendous promise in that.
Doesn't it always in these systems of typing start with self-knowledge, I think? And I forgive anybody whose eyes are rolling at the idea of, oh gosh, another one of these. What am I this week? Am I green donkey this week, or what is it? But I do urge you to use discretion in terms of driving your usage of highly data-driven samples like ours. But still, I think it starts with self-knowledge. If I can appreciate, I think about my own career. I'm a striver. My name's James. I'm a striver.
And a helper as well, I know.
And you're a pioneer, by the way, I know.
I know, yes.
But the times when I've taken risks in my career, 3 or 4 of them, I can focus on very well. I've sort of acted like a pioneer. We'll come on to these terms later. I can now understand what was making me a little bit uncomfortable the whole time. Just wasn't quite right. But so the opportunity you asked about, yes, I think it is start with yourself, understand why you hate your job, why you love your job, why those people there are difficult to work with, but these people here are easy to work with. And then it builds from there, whether you're in a very senior leadership position or whether you're managing a team of 4 or 5 people around you, it doesn't matter. Any kind of leadership dynamic is improved by an appreciation of what other people are motivated by. And I write about that a lot in the book, obviously, from some stories I've seen, but it's a first principles idea that if I understand that you, Elise, are a pioneer and I'm the team leader as a striver, I can probably allow you to do things and behave in certain ways that if I just assumed you were like everybody else or like me, I would find intolerable. That's progress. And I think it locks into what I said a few minutes ago about just the way firms are valuing different kinds of roles. If you value the professional manager trudging up the ladder, then you want someone who's looking a bit like a striver to do that.
That's right.
But if you value all sorts of other roles, individual roles, expert roles, coach roles, IC roles, the artisan will be important, the pioneer may be important, the giver may be important. You have a lot more leeway to kind of consider alternates. And then the third thing that happens, so yourself, other people around you, the third thing that happens is you can understand the predictable tensions.
Yes.
This is something I've studied quite a bit. Although not nearly enough, I have to say, but I do talk about the 10 tensions between different motivation archetypes that I've seen most and try to unpack them a little bit to help me understand why would it be so annoying for you and I to work together? Well, you're a pioneer. You look at me and say, oh, he's so focused on money, or he's so focused on just that milestone. Whereas I, as a pioneer, I changed that. We changed direction last week when we decided we were going to go after it.
Right.
And I look at you and go, oh, she's so unpredictable. My God, can't you have an idea and stick with it and let me get on with my, right? You can see how that dialogue can break down a little bit and then repeat that through all the various nodes of interaction. So I think that's what it is. Yourself, the team around you, could be your boss, could be people who work for you, your peers, and then how to manage and understand those predictable tensions that arise between different archetypes.
That is so beautiful, James. I want to comment on that, but let's grab our first break here, and I'll do so afterwards. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We're on the air with James Root. He's a senior partner of Bain & Company and a chair of Bain Futures. We've been talking a bit first to start about why is it important to understand the motivations, the different motivations that people have at work. After the break, we're going to talk about the 6 archetypes that he came up with in his research and start teaching you how to work with your people more effectively together through them. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If you are just joining the show today, my guest is James Root. He's the author of The Archetype Effect, Unlocking the 6 Archetypes at Work. So my comment that I wanted to share with you before we went on the break was because there's a reason that I'm an organizational psychologist and not a clinical psychologist. And that's because I believe in the wonder and the power and the centrality importance of work. It's something that we all need to do. It's a function of life. And yet it isn't working for so many people. People need to work on, for different reasons. They need to work part-time when they're caring for loved ones, et cetera. And most of the systems are not built for anything outside of, as you say, the average person you're trying to go after. So I'm such a fan of your work and really feel like this you've got to wade through this book and this research, I think, James, to help people better understand where things are broken. And then because of your vast experience in consulting, help them understand how to get things back on track and working for them again. So that's what excites me.
More good jobs, I think, is a good summary of that. I'm not worried. I became worried in the course of, the last 5 years or so thinking about this. Just not enough good jobs anymore. I worry that we peaked 20 years ago. But so this is part of, it's a small contribution to many people's work on that theme that you're also focused on.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. We need more people chugging down this path with us. Okay, so before we get into the 6 archetypes, I do want to just briefly discuss, I know that there were 10 dimensions of motivations at work and your study considered. We don't need to talk about all of them per se if you don't want to, but I wanted to help our listeners and viewers get a better understanding of just the breadth and depth of what you really scrutinized here. So can you share a few of those dimensions?
Yes. And the context is, we, as I said, we are not trained psychologists by any means. We're business people, business advisors, but we were able, as you would imagine, to go very, very deep on all the existing systems out there, from MBTI to Big 5, which are ones that a lot of people do know, even non-psychologists, and then things that are a bit more specialist inside the world of work, like Shine's Anchors and Hogan and the multitude of tests out there. So we were able to look at all of them. What do they look at?
Yeah.
And sort of cherry pick a little bit and then use our own intuition. So we focus on 10. So headlines would be, a very important one is how work-centric are you?
Yes, that's what was one of mine too. Mm-hmm.
How much of your ID, yourself, comes from work? Another very important one would be sort of risk tolerance. Am I at work? Am I willing to take big risks, even if I could be worse off? Or am I really not? But I just prefer to keep my head keep my head down and do a good job and get home to, pick up Johnny from football at 5 o'clock, if that's the most important thing to me. I think autonomy is another very important one that we explored, Elise. How much do I, want to be in control of what I'm doing versus sort of part of a system that, has very clear-cut cogs in the wheel. I think mastery is one that doesn't come up very much in the other systems that we valued highly. So how much satisfaction, motivation do I get from just being a master of what I'm doing versus, 80% is okay, and I'm going to muck in with the rest of the team. And then what we were just talking about, self-transcendence. Does work deliver self-transcendence to me? Or is it just not where I see that kind of aspects of satisfaction in my life? So those are, I think, 5 of the 10. We don't need to go to the other ones, but it's a pretty comprehensive list. We made it as short as we could. You still very hard to get less than 10 in our experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I just think it's helpful for people to understand just this the kinds of things that you looked at in your study. So robust. So I know you do this beautifully in the book. You have the 6 archetypes, but then you really also break them down. There's a group of 3, each of them having 2 in that according to their motivation. Yeah. So maybe if you want to start with just simply giving us that framework of the 3x2 framework, and then I want to talk about each of the archetypes as well.
Okay. So the 3 kind of platforms, I suppose, are relationships at work, number 1, and that covers 2 archetypes. Learning at work covers 2, and then achievement at work covers 2. So I can go straight on if you want, or you can direct me as you see fit.
Well, then, so you want to go ahead and talk about the 2 that comprise the relationships first?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a profile that we call the giver that is quite prevalent. It's about 17% of the workforce. That doesn't mean it's 70% of the workforce in your firm or in my firm, but just on average across the world, 70%. Mm-hmm. The giver is a profile that wants others to thrive. It's not that they don't care about themselves. They do. They want to learn. They want to grow. They're, of the 6, by the way, they're the least motivated by money, however, by good compensation. Their mojo is, I want to create teams or environments or situations where other people are thriving, and that's what gets me going. So that's a kind of relationships at work are very important to them. The other relationship-driven archetype is the operator. Remember the operator, the largest cohort of all. Almost a quarter of the working force around the world. They find meaning and things related to meaning in life outside of work. There's a quote from this wonderful woman we did an interview with called Beverly, who's an HR manager in a telecoms company down south in the USA. Honestly, she said, my job is just a job. Right. What matters to me happens outside of work. Yeah. And she was a very successful woman, 43 years old, rising up. But that wasn't what it was about for her. Right. So they love friendships at work. They're often the backbone people on your teams. They want to do a good job, but they want to keep their head down. They're not risk takers, and they want to get out in order to do the thing that really, really makes a difference to their lives. So that's the operator.
Right. Okay. So 2 comments to that, James. First, yes. I will tell you that one maps directly over to one of my 15 modes of engagement, which I call instrumental marketable skill. I have a skill that I can trade in the economy. I'm good at this thing. I like it as well, but it's an instrumental marketable skill for me. That's how it maps over for mine. And then the other thing is that I need to give you a thank you, because as I was reading this book in preparation for this conversation, of course, I shared it with my 22-year-old daughter, who is trying to figure out where she's going to go in her life. And I said, which of these types do you think you are? And she quickly identified that she's an operator. Well, that helps so much in how she's going to figure out what kind of job she wants to get. Yes. And now her dad is definitely a striver, and I'm a pioneer. Poor kid. She's like, in the middle of all of this.
It's okay. It's right? Okay. She's going to be fine.
Exactly. But I want to say thank you, because it helped give her more clarity about, I don't want that kind of stuff in my work. I don't want that. I don't want to be a pioneer at all. And I don't want to be a striver. So thank you for that, James. Just tremendous help already.
I don't want to use up a lot of your valuable time on this, but I have a 22-year-old son who has also identified as an operator. And his dad is a striver and a mum something. So I get it. He's trying to find his way in the world of work as well. It's complicated, but these things can help.
Absolutely.
I wish I'd had some kind of framework like this myself when I was going through.
Me too. Me too. And my life would have made so much more sense earlier. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay. So let's go to the learning motivation, and the
Yes.
archetypes for the learning motivation are.
Yes. So the first one we call an explorer, and the clues in the name. They really value freedom and experience. They tend to live in the present, seek out careers that provide lots and lots of variety and excitement. They place a higher than average importance on autonomy, because they want to have the chance to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to try this. Interestingly enough, they take a very pragmatic approach to their own sort of skill development. They don't like the striver massively over skills for everything, but the explorer just skills up as much as they think they're going to need to do fine in this job, knowing somewhere that they're probably going to be having a different job in a few years' time. So they explore multiple careers in their life. And I think enthusiasm, trade-off money, trade-off status, trade-off title for the chance to continue to have that freedom. So that's the explorer. The other one.
And how many? Sorry, James. What percentage or so are they?
Oh, sorry. Yes, the explorer is 11%.
11%. Okay. All right.
The artisan is the other one linked to this idea of learning, but it's a completely different angle on it. They seek out work that fascinates and inspires them.
Mm-hmm.
They're motivated by the pursuit, what I was talking about earlier, the pursuit of mastery, always wanting to perfect their expertise and their skills. I always think of sushi chefs when I can't get them out of my head now. Every day, do the same thing every day and just try to get it absolutely perfect. It never will be, but I'm going to keep trying. And don't bug them with, don't send them a form from HR saying, please fill this in by lunchtime tomorrow. They don't want to do that stuff. Leave them alone to get on. They want to produce work that's very valuable to their team. They want their output to be used. It's not some sort of theoretical, purely academic exercise, but they don't want to be, have their time taken by the camaraderie or all the other things that go on to make up a firm. So that's the artisan.
And what percentage are they?
They are 17%, like the givers.
17%. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now that means that we're now boogieing down to the achievement motivation types.
Yes. So the striver is the first one. This is a person that has a strong desire to make something themselves at work professionally. They like professional success. They like the milestones. They like the recognition that comes with achieving a milestone, whether that's money or promotion or title or just the recognition. So you did a good job. We gave you a task and you achieved it. Thank you very much. So they get a lot done, not big risk takers professionally. And, at their worst, it can be quite transactional and seem quite competitive. But certainly people that 21% of the workforce, and they get a lot of stuff done in many organizations. The pioneer, which is the last and the smallest cohort, only 10% of the working population, is also motivated by achievement. But their definition of achievement is completely different. It is, I want to change the world in some way. You are a good example of that. So what they do is they develop a very strong vision about the way they think things should be at their firm, in their work, and they try and bend the will of everybody else around that. And
guilty is charged.
Okay, and they want you to come with them, but even if you're not coming with them, they're going anyway. And there's a little bit of the kind of move fast, break things aspect to them. Super risk tolerant. I would almost say risk seeking. Mm-hmm. And they're very much aligned to this vision that they have, which isn't selfish. It's often very altruistic. And when I say change the world, I don't literally mean that. I mean, it could be a kind of Muskian, let's become a multi-planetary species type of thing. But an example I often use, I have a friend who's a financial controller at a medium-sized firm. She's a pioneer. Her definition of change the world is, I want to change the way we do the month-end close. Mm-hmm. Great. I get that's a big change in many firms of small size. So great. That is exactly what a pioneer would say about their desire to do that. So that's the pioneer, and those are the six archetypes. So operators 24%, strivers 21%, artisans and givers both 17%, explorer 11%, the pioneer only 10%.
Yes, I do feel lonely. Yes, thank you for that. So just briefly, when I did my research, I was looking to really understand the experience people were having in their work. How did they experience their work? How did they experience meaning? And what did they mean to their sense of self? So I also coded for positive and negative experiences. So I have, I think, 3 modes that are in the negative realm. And one of those is an existential crisis. This is the most horrible place to be. And so that's part of the reason I came up with because I added value balance and negative and positive experience, I ended up with 15 modes versus more like your more accessible 6 archetypes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
just kind of interesting.
Yes. Our goal, by the way, Elise, was to have as few as possible.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Things like MBTI, just way too many. Now, having said that, it was 6, it was not 5, and it was not 7. I mean, with that, this analytically driven to get to 6, we couldn't get any less than that.
Yeah.
At 6, we could see clear, bright lines between the boxes. Of course, there's overlaps. But
Sure. But I can clearly discern which ones I'm not, right? I can clearly discern that. And so I think, Ken, our listeners and viewers, I think it's really important to point out that you say in every country, because this is a multi-country study that you did. It's not like you just did this in the US or in Hong Kong or London or whatever, or the UK. And you show that the operators and strivers are the 2 largest archetypes combined, and they represent 40 to 50% of the working population. That's incredible. That's important to understand.
Incredible. So just quickly on the research to credentialize it, 19 markets in the world. Those 19 markets represent 75% of global GDP. So, developing markets with younger workforces, mature markets with aging workforces, and everything in between. So I feel pretty solid in the quality. It's about 50,000 people have done the full research, and about another 150,000 people have taken the quick quiz that I think you're going to send a link to, which just takes a minute and a half, and you've got a quick read on your profile. So lots of data to support this. But yes, I mean, if there's one thing to take away from all this, if you're a leader of any sort, leading a small team at work, or leading a family, or leading a basketball team, you better know, whatever your own archetype is, you better know how to manage operators and strivers.
Right.
Because they are going to be roughly half of the people that you're managing. And it's extraordinarily consistent from country to country, age group to age group, gender to gender. I mean, it's operators and strivers are anywhere from 40 to as high as over 50% in Japan are these 2 profiles. So they're very, very important to all firms.
So much goodness to dig into here. Let's grab our last break here. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We're on the air with James Root. He's the author of The Archetype Effect, Unlocking the 6 Archetypes at Work. We've been talking a bit about the research and the 6 different archetypes that his research found. After the break, we're going to talk more about how organizations and leaders can use this stuff to more productively engage and retain their workforce, starting with this idea of where natural conflict comes from among them. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us, and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If you are just joining us now, my guest is James Root. He's the author of The Archetype Effect, Unlocking the 6 Archetypes at Work. So you mentioned this earlier before, James, but I do want to dig into it a little bit more deeply, because I think so many leaders struggle with, why can't my people just get along? Why can't they just make things work? But your research really helps illuminate, and I like how you situate those different, well anticipated conflict that comes between these different modes. But can you talk a bit about how natural conflict arises between them, and maybe what can be done to sort of mitigate that?
Yes. Maybe the quick preface is where I recommend people in organizations start is do the research. It's very simple to do. Do the research, understand a little bit about what the profile mix that you have is. It won't be the same as the firm in the office next door. It'll be unique to you to some extent, although of course it'll pull from the averages depending on your industry. It allows the leaders to know what their archetypes are, and that's a huge topic, how leader archetypes can differ from the teams that they lead.
Absolutely.
And it also gives you a little bit of a view of by gender, by age, by ethnicity, maybe by country, if you're in a multi-country firm, by job type. What have you got going on? Because I will get to your question, but one of the things I have found, I've come to believe, is that most firms unconsciously have built their talent systems around one archetype.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know they were doing that, but that's what they did. It could be to do with the founders or some seminal event in the history, but most often I think it's for a firm of any age, 20, 30, 40 years, it's just we just assumed everybody's a striver.
Right.
So we build talent systems for strivers because that's easy. So back to your question. This is observational rather than, I would say, quantitative. And it goes like this. My doorbell is ringing, wouldn't you know? Right in the middle.
Yeah.
It's just something about Murphy's Law when you're in a hotel.
Oh, that's okay. It adds to the color of it. No worries.
Can you come back later, please? That's okay. Not your fault. So what I do is I basically try and profile. Everybody has a working style. So all of these 6 archetypes, I just described them to you briefly, but what I didn't get into is the working style. What are they comfortable with?
Yeah.
In terms of risk, in terms of environment, in terms of degree of direction, amount of uncertainty they like to do, predictability, number of hours, those kinds of things. And when you start to look at those, and they're all fully documented in the book and the research, you can actually have a predictive sense of where tensions are going to arise. Tensions arise at work for many reasons. Roles can be at odds with each other. People's sense of values at work can be different. People's power dynamics can get them into tensions. All sorts of things can cause tensions. My belief is that archetype differences also can cause tensions, as well as alliances. Of course, some pairs of archetypes work very, very well together. I mentioned earlier, you and I cartooned us as pioneer and striver. But you put an artisan together with a giver. The artisan is the least teamy of all the archetypes. Let's have drinks with the team to get to know each other better. I don't want to get to know you better. It doesn't make me a bad worker. I'm just to write my code or do whatever. The giver, by contrast, is the most teamy. They love the team. It's all about the team for the giver. So you can see how those two could block heads, and the same for the explorer and the operator. I'm not going to get into all the details of the 10, but it's super powerful to have a look at what you are and then think about the people you work most closely with and say, that's working well, why? That's not working as well, why? And this, I'd like to predict that this will help you understand that in some ways.
No question. So I like the idea that we start first with assessing your workforce. What have you got in terms of percentages of each of the 6 archetypes? And by the way, what is that? Let's get that now. What is the assessment link? Where do they go to get the assessment?
Well, you can only get the miniature one. The other one is like we do it.
Okay.
Yeah, the Bain team will do it, but it's not a very invasive process. And nor is it a very difficult process, but we've got the databases, being run by our teams in the back office in India, and they can do all the benchmarks of you versus everybody else. So that needs. But the quick quiz that you've taken, Elise, can be done, a minute and a half by everybody in your team. It's not a bad place to start. That requires nothing other than just going to Bain.com and finding it.
Okay, gotcha. Perfect. Okay, so then after we've done that work, then the next thing you talk about is it's really important that organizations examine the culture that it was built to reward. What are we rewarding here? And I do that too when I'm doing the surveys and employee engagement surveys, is getting under the hood of, well, hang on a minute, what behaviors are we actually rewarding here?
So good. Yeah, I'm not surprised that you do that as part of your work. It's so revealing about what's going on in the firm, even in an unwritten way, what the kind of operating values are. When you put a person up in front of the organization at the town hall and say, hey, we're promoting Elise this week. Say, oh, okay, that's what's working here. Mm-hmm. So I prowl around the offices of my clients, sort of observing these moments of recognition, celebration, and make little mental notes. I never guess people's archetype, I have to say. I really try to avoid that, because for one simple reason: people conceal aspects of who they are at work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the DEI specialists have proven that to us, even if we didn't already know it. But so don't guess, but just ask people politely, if you've taken it, would you like to take this too, and we can have a chit chat about the differences between us. But yes, it's I'm not surprised you do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And essentially, the way that we ask it is, what will get you praise here? What will get? So it's amazing what people say. You've already mentioned, that's important that you consider too that who was your talent system built for, and invariably it was probably leaders from 20 years ago, if you've been around that long, or whatever it is, and that they probably will be more of the striver category.
Often, yeah.
Once you understand that, right, then you recognize, oh my gosh, we built this system. It is for just this one archetype. And no wonder we're alienating or losing all the other five. So I think that's really worth pointing out as well, is that there's some examination about what's happening here. You then go on to say that is fascinating, because you say as a global services firm, you learn that the mix of strivers was almost 2.5 times the norm of other organizations, 48% compared to 21% global average. So that's your mix, right? That's what your organization is about. And knowing what others are, maybe maybe part of their value system, or your value system, listeners and viewers, is you really value, work-life harmony. You want your people to have big, full lives, which includes something outside of the four corners of your office. Have you built your talent reward systems for that?
Yes, I mean, I think that, I don't talk too much about Bain, but yeah, we are constantly tinkering or even making big changes in the way we think about value proposition for our people and the reward systems for it. But there's no doubt that we, like many, many firms of our age, we're 53 years old almost, firms of our age, absolutely in the middle of the bullseye, talent systems built by strivers for strivers. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say there's anything bad about that. We are an extremely lucky firm in the sense that we're always winning the Glassdoor Best Place to Work awards and these kinds of things. So I'm not criticizing it. I am saying, though, that our firm, like every firm in the world, is experiencing a dramatic change in the type of talent that it needs to acquire and retain. So everybody's at some level, I'm exaggerating a bit, but everybody's becoming a technology firm. And what I have observed at my clients and around the world in general is a lot of the DevOps people, the data architects, the data scientists, the product managers, they're not classic strivers.
Right.
You might have far more explorer in them, far more pioneer in them, far more artisan in some of them who just want to, as I said before, be left to learn to write their code. And our systems, they need to catch up to this diversity, because those people do not flourish in a striver-driven system of talent management. They may suck it up. They may say, okay, I get it, it's not perfect for me, but I'll put up with it because I like working at Google, I like whatever it might be. But fundamentally, it's not really designed for them. And I'll never forget this moment in a focus group. After we do the quantitative research, we typically do focus groups by archetype within a firm. So get all the strivers together, get a sample of them, This one woman who sat back at the end of the research debrief that I'd shared with them and said, okay, I'm a pioneer living in a striver's world. Mm-hmm. I just got to get used to that.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I get it. It's not ideal for me because I am a pioneer and I'd like to be rewarded for having a big vision and changing everything. But I recognize that the system doesn't actually optimize for my satisfaction and productivity. So, but these things are very doable, and we now have a system here which can allow you to do it quite fast.
I think, like you said before, just knowing, this is what's happening here, just recognizing this is what the disconnect can come from. It's just so powerful. So the other thing that's important here is since that many organizations probably did create their reward systems for strivers because they were maybe created by strivers or now then led by strivers. And now you have a major disconnect with some of the other groups. And where I think this gets interesting, James, and you correct me if I'm wrong about this, I think you as a leader listening to us talk, you might recognize if this is your problem, if you find yourself saying things like, I don't know why our people don't want to work. I don't know why they don't want to work hard. I do. Yeah. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely fair. And it's particularly true about the poor benighted Gen Z, right? How many times do I get this question? What are we going to do about Gen Z?
Right.
I just try and stop the conversation straight away and say that you're framing the question incorrectly. It will be like me saying, oh, what am I going to do about all women? Or what am I going to do about all Chinese people?
Right.
Or all LGBTQ plus world? As if we could take a giant cohort like Gen Z or women and just say they're all the same. So let's just have one standard solution for them. It's absurd. So let's stop asking the question, what we can do about Gen Z? Some Gen Z want to change the world. Some Gen Z want to have milestones, hit them, get rewarded. Some want to be artisans and do, I got the data to prove that. And the mix of archetypes amongst the Gen Z is not that different than the mix of archetypes amongst the millennials, honestly. But you're absolutely right. I think that question comes up a lot. The frustration it causes people in their 40s, 50s, 60s about what's different about people around them. This can, again, if you're brave enough to say this is who I am, and then brave enough to ask your people around you, do you take this test, and then we can have a discussion, you can make a lot of breakthrough there.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's worth noting too, there's so much we could call it in your book here, James, but you do talk about that there are far more operators than there are, of course, than exist in the leadership camps. They're so strong. So you think about, you need operators, you need them on your team, and if you're alienating them because you as a leader are more of on the striver camp,
or pioneer camp, yes,
or pioneer camp, yeah.
Absolutely true. This is a tremendous concern that I get a chance to talk about with the leadership teams I spend time with. If I take I'll tip our research where we call them executives. It's not quite the same as C-suite. It's kind of a bigger group. It's only 2-3% of the population that we surveyed. But even there's a skew towards pioneers. It's quite dramatic.
Yeah, interesting.
More than 2 times the number of pioneers that exist in the working force population overall are in leadership, in executive roles. So 22% roughly. It varies from country to country. So there's one dramatic difference. So there's pioneers, love risk, change the world, move fast, break things. Meantime, operators who they manage going, no, we're fine down here. Everything's okay. Break things. Because I've got my process down here. It's working.
Right.
When you go up to the C-suite, and this is now only qualitative because I can't do the research on it, but just the people I spend time with, a typical group of 12, 15 people around a leadership table, it is very common to have 0 artisans and 0 operators. So where is the voice of those 2 archetypes going to be heard? How is it going to be represented on the C-suite of many, many organizations? That's a question I don't have an answer to, but I know it's a question we've got to address.
So important. I just want to briefly touch on this last point here, James. You talk about the role of optimism in organizations and how leaders can steward it for their organizations. And I think today especially, can we situate optimism here? Can you briefly touch on that?
Yes, I'm like you, I'm sure. I study the Gallup data annually when it comes out. Gallup's a polling organization that has become famous for asking this question about the workforce around the world. And it's miserable reading. Every year about how many people are disengaged and how many people are so unhappy and pessimistic about their work. And so and we did a lot of research about stress and energy and wellness at work that's in the book. And there I was poring over the data about stress, getting stressed about it myself, not knowing what was going on. And it's something popped out. We did ask a question of all the people in our sample, all 50,000, about their optimism levels. And it was extraordinarily high. Even for the younger the Gen Zs, you asked them the question, it was framed as 5 to 10 years now, are you optimistic that your life will be better? We have, high 70s, mid 80s, some countries high 90s of the workforce saying, yeah, I'm optimistic. And I feel like the unlock that we have to get to as leaders and managers of people is to turn that optimism into engagement, which is the Gallup measure, the opposite of disengagement and pessimism. And huge numbers of people will find their work experience very different if we could do that.
Amazing. Now, we've come pretty close to the end of the show here, and I do want to give you the chance to be able to leave our listeners and viewers with what you like. And very briefly, what would you like to leave them with today?
Well, just here's a language you can try to understand more about why you like your job or why you don't like your job and which parts of it you like and don't like. There's a language for you to understand that very simply. It's not a complicated 16-box riddle nobody understands anyway. That's the first thing. So there is a little bit of, again, I would never say I'm a self-help expert. I'm not, but it turned out that this is a bit of self-help in this book. The second thing is I said this before, I'll say it again, be brave enough to ask, to identify your own archetype, and then ask maybe your HR team or your colleagues, your peers, your people on your working team to do the quiz, and then spend time talking to each other as a group. Have the courage to take your story about your career through the lens of the archetypes to your HR leader or your line leader, and say, look, this is something that's going on with me. How can we design the next year or two in my job here with this in mind? Obviously, skills are the most important thing. Nothing in what I'm saying says skills are not absolutely fundamental, but skills plus motivations makes for a better career path than skills alone. That's my view.
James, it's just spectacular to know you, to learn from you, to be inspired by you. Thank you so much for coming on Working on Purpose and sharing so beautifully your work. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know our listeners and viewers did too. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
Listeners and viewers, you're going to want to learn more about James Root, the work that he does at Bain Consulting, in his book, The Archetype Effect. So visit Bain. It's just www.bain.com. That's BAIN.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We'll see you next week for another nourishing and inspiring episode on Working on Purpose. Together, let's lean in and learn together how to make workplaces and work for everyone and find ways to do business that betters the world. Let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.